morning, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Really pleased to see you all. We've got a couple of different things in the meeting this morning, and that's in response to some feedback that you've given us. Your response to the meetings we've been holding has been really positive, but you've also given us some constructive things like we're really missing the networking. So we tried out some networking at the last session, and then we got, well, that was a bit too short, we need a bit longer. So you're getting a longer networking session today. So we do listen to what you tell us, so please do keep that feedback coming. We're continually looking to getting better at what we do. I'm delighted to see 2 3x3 sessions in today. I've got my timer ready, and both Adam and Sarah have been warned about how vicious I am with my timer. So in the interest of keeping us on time, I'm going to open my phone, if it will actually fall. There we go, I've got my timer ready. Adam, are you ready for your 3x3? We'll jump straight in. Wonderful, right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks everybody for the opportunity to talk to you about this. I apologise for the graphics. This was at 10 o'clock last night. We've put quite a big range of COVID products.
Sorry, Adam, just to interrupt you, very, very quiet again.
Is that any better?
That's super. Yeah, much better. Brilliant.
Yeah, we've got a range of products to help make workplaces safer in regards to COVID-19. You can see some of them on the first slide here. We've got the hand dispensers with the custom signage. We've got the floor graphics and the obviously the desk dividers and the clothing. On the next slide, mainly focus on the COVID screens. These come in either freestanding or fixed. We can actually glue them to any countertop, which removes the need for drilling. They're made from quality 4mm acrylic. They're custom made to any size. You can have any opening for passing papers through or anything like that. They're all made on site, rounded edges, you know, for safety. There's no sharp edges on them. So I apologise for the picture of the freestanding one. That's actually a prototype that we're finishing today. We don't actually have a picture of it yet. On the next slide is mainly the floor graphics. Now, I've seen a lot of floor graphics at the moment. People selling textured wallpaper, believe it or not, to use as floor graphic material. Ours are made from 3M material, which have a certified anti-slip rating, so they're suitable for use in factories or any workspace. It'll stick to concrete, as you see outside, for short-term use. It'll stick to any sort of painted floors. It'll also stick to short pile carpet. You can have it in any colour, any design, any size, with your own company branding on. We do have some stock designs, as you can see below, but obviously, you know, you can have anything you want from there. But it's a little bit more expensive, but you know, certified for use in workplaces, not like some you've seen online. We've gone now from the next slide, please, Andrew. We've gone to full in-house production. We had this machine installed on Friday. It's a CNC router, so all the screens are made we do have stock of acrylic at the moment, but obviously there's a nationwide shortage of it. So we you know, if anybody's looking for screens, speed is of the essence, because it's looking around about a 6-week lead time once this batch runs out. And if you just on the next slide, please, Andrew, there's just a bit more. These are just some examples of some of our screens in place. So you see they have quite a nice decorative aluminium trim on the bottom. Very popular for use in offices, especially if you've got quite expensive desks and you don't want to have to screw the screens down. And I say they don't need to be clamped.
And your 3 minutes is up, Adam. Sorry about that. In the interest of fairness, I will make it clear I did stop the timer when you were told you needed to be a little bit louder, so you did get that little bit of time there as well. But thank you for that. I think you got a lot over in the 3 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. Sorry to interrupt you there, but you might as well have been heard. So next up, we have a presentation from IKM. So I will hand across to Eddie. Let me just find you. Eddie Winters is going to start this presentation. And let me, you've unmuted yourself. Thanks, Eddie. So over to you as and when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eddie Winters, Business Development Manager from IKM Consulting. and I'm here today with my colleague Trish Palmer, who will be delivering the presentation. Little brief background in ICAM Consulting. We're multidisciplinary consulting engineers. We're based out of Grangemouth, and we're a team of 75 scientists, engineers, and surveyors. We work predominantly within the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. I'm based in Falkirk, which is 135 miles from Durham. Tricia is in Canada, which is many miles from Durham. So I'm now going to pass over to Trish, and she's going to deliver today's presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining me today. I'm going to be presenting on how site digitization leads to an online induction system. I'm going to briefly touch on ICAM Digital Solutions history to hopefully show some of the integrated solutions that we've been working on. And in particular, I'm going to focus on my specialty, which is asset digitization and visualization, as well as a little bit about deploying these programs online. So just next slide, please. Again, just a quick introduction. My name is Trish Palmer, and I am the Technical Associate at ICAM Digital Solutions. I have been working in high hazard industries for the past 15 years with a specialty in creating safety materials, technical training, and induction programs. And it's really my background in the creation of the content that's led me to explore new ways to share and communicate this information. So I'd also like to touch on our online systems in a minute. Next slide, please. Right, so a high-level outline, and I just want to touch on these topics very, very briefly. The topic of digitization versus digitalization. So there is quite a lot of confusion between these terms. So I want to talk about why it's applicable to this presentation. Then I want to touch on large-scale data capture. This is because this is the first step of how we capture information for creating digital plants. It's also really applicable for aging facilities that were built before the digital era, so before CAD and before Revit were mainstream software programs. So capturing that data and digitally recreating it just wasn't practical in the past. So I want to touch on some of the emerging technologies for that. And then finally, I'm going to touch on online induction systems, and in particular, our online induction system called Induct ePass. Next slide, please. So, digitalization versus digitization. These two terms are often mistaken, so I just want to clarify what they mean, and in particular what they mean in the context of what we do. So digitization is a very, very broad term, and it normally applies to internal processes. It is the process of taking something analog and going to digital. So an example of this would be taking a PNID or a technical drawing and scanning that to make it digital. Digitalization, there's a lot of noise in the industry about going digital. So digitalization comes after that. And it's really about how you pick up that data and impact how work gets done. It's about engaging and interacting with your clients, your staff, and third parties. And it's about creating new digital revenue streams. So in this context, digitalization for us is about helping clients to use visual assets to communicate information. So I'm going to touch on how we go about that and some of the client projects that we've worked on. Next slide, please. So data capture, we have been working with our surveying team over the years to build many of the digital assets that we have created in these programs. So for historic sites, there is a conversion from going to what you see in the built environment to picking that up and creating a digital model of that. And historically speaking, that's been really difficult. But with new technologies, through laser scanning, mobile mapping, drone inspections, we can pick up that data and translate it into a communication tool, such as a 3D model. And businesses have really been able to generate value from programs like this, especially for use in breaking down silos and third-party communication. So now that I've talked about how we grab the data, I want to explain what that looks like from our perspective. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And if it's possible to play the video that's embedded in that slide. Okay, so what you're looking at on screen, this is raw point cloud data. So this is what it looks like when we scan something out in the field and bring it back to the office. So you can see on the left-hand side that the unclear image is where the data is sitting. That's the raw point cloud, which is made up of millions of dots of georeferenced information. And how we create a digital model is we draw over these tiny points of georeferenced information to convert it into a model. And how accurately we go about that really depends on the client's end game. So if it's for engineering purposes, the level of detail will be highly accurate to within 5 millimeters. If it's for visualization purposes, then the level of detail obviously will meet for the purpose, and we'll scale that back a little bit. So that's what it looks like when we say that we are capturing data in the field. It's also what it looks like when we translate that data into a digital model. So now that I've talked about how we capture it, how we create the model, I want to talk a little bit about what we use those models for. So if we could just pop to the next slide, please, and play the video that's embedded. Oh, previous slide, sorry. That's the one, that's a video. Perfect. So I want to show you what this looks like in the context of us picking it up and using it for communication purposes. And as you can see on the screen, the list is pretty extensive. We use this from anything to animation, virtual reality, safety inductions. And I think that this is really where having a clear digitalization strategy helps an organization to maximize the investment that they make in these digital assets. So I'm going to share a case study in a moment about a client that has had a very, very clear strategy for their digital assets. And they've been working on this strategy for almost 10 years now, and it's really allowed them to drive this across their internal teams, so across safety, across operations, across training, and out towards their third parties. So if we can just go to the next slide, please, Andrew, and play the video. Perfect. So this is just a wee snippet of a safety induction that we created for a client. And this client in particular made a big investment in creating digital assets. So they've got 6 separate operating sites doing different things. And geographically speaking, they wanted to be able to pull the scope of their operations in so that everyone could understand exactly how complex that was. So again, they have used these digital assets across safety and onboarding, major projects, technical training, internal and external communication programs. So the way that they have used the integration across their digital strategy has really played into how they've maximized the return on their investment. So I've touched on how we scan to build a model, how we draw over that to convert it into a digital format, what we use it for. And now I want to talk a little bit about how we can push that out into the world for third-party communication. So if we can just pop to the next slide, please, and play the video embedded on that. Right, so InductEPass is our online safety induction system. And I do want to preface this conversation to say that if there is anybody with a safety background in the audience today, this system is not about bypassing that safety conversation. The conversation is critical and it must be had. The reason that we developed this system was really to be able to provide a remote orientation and to set an expectation up front about safety awareness before any boots hit the ground. It's also about streamlining the process a little bit. So for those of you who have to take safety inductions on a regular basis, you'll know that it can be quite time consuming, sometimes as much as half a day sitting in an induction program. So this was really about offering a flexible solution to our clients. So I'd like to talk about the user versus the admin benefits and just show you a little bit about how the system works. Can we pop to the next slide? Oh, there you are. Perfect. So it is rather simple. So we create a microsite on InductEPass. So at the bottom of the slide, you'll see I've created an illustration. This isn't a live example, but it will give you an idea of what it looks like in a practical sense. So you distribute the URL. So in this instance, it might be becbc.inductepass. Okay, so you give that to people. They log on to the website to register. Our system sends them a access code, and essentially they log in and they watch the induction. So if we go to the next slide. So once they've signed in, before they begin the induction, they're going to be asked to allow access to the camera on their mobile device or laptop. The first question that we always get asked is, how do you know that the person who is taking the safety induction is the same person who arrives on site? So as an added security measure, we set up our system to take photos at random throughout the course of the presentation. Upon successful completion, the system also chooses a random photo to use on your certificate of completion. So for anybody who doesn't know what a QR code is, it's that image that's right under the picture on screen there. And that's a unique identifier, okay? And that's what is embedded into your user profile. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what happens is when you complete, you go to site and your QR code will be scanned, and the premise of the system is simple. The QR code that you bring to site with you must match the QR code that is stored in our system. You also must match the photograph that is on the completion certificate. So it's a very, very simple process. You can store the QR code and completion certificate on your phone, or you can print the certificate if mobile phones are not allowed on your facility. Next slide, please. Right, so what about admin? Equally, we wanted to keep the system simple and user-friendly. So we work with teams regularly, and we've derived two methods for administrators to use the system. The first one is through the desktop site, and that's really applicable for people who need to be able to interrogate the information and run reports. Equally, there are a lot of site-based people that we work with, security staff and access control. They don't need to interrogate that information. A simple scanning system will work for them, and they can use our app and download that onto a mobile phone. It's a good solution because it's contactless, so there's no contact between the user or the access control people. The user can lay their phone or the printed security certificate onto the desk, and then the access control person can come up to scan that. So it's a nice clean system that provides quite a lot of flexibility. Next slide, please. I'm not going to talk a lot about reporting, and that's because it's usually very customized to our clients. There is a reporting system, so I'll just give a couple of examples about what you can interrogate within the system. And user completions and expiration notifications are usually the top things that people want to look at. So if you're a line manager and you want to make sure that all of your staff have relevant and up-to-date safety inductions, you can log into the system, run a report, and then action anything that needs to be resolved from that. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, one small point that I do want to make is InductEPass is an online induction system, but it is also an integrated learning management system. So if you're looking for a solution of where you can load your safety training materials and your inductions, as well as any technical training that you might have in a simple facility with a good reporting system that allows you to create an audit trail, then this might be a solution for you. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, please fire them across. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Tricia. That was good. I like any presentation that talks about digital and digital assets, digital strategy, and so on. So that all makes good sense, I think.
It's a big topic, so forgive me if I've skirted over quite a lot of it, but 15 minutes isn't a lot of time.
No. So we've got nothing appearing in the chat. Do we have any questions for IKM? So that's either Tricia or Eddie at this point. And if you want to ask a question, just make yourself known, or even just if you want to unmute yourself and put that question directly to either of our speakers there this morning, then please feel free to shout out now. Seems potentially a good time for that kind of technology with contactless as well, obviously.
It is, yeah. It's a simple technology.
Yeah. Okay, so some Angie saying she thought it was very interesting. Do we have any specific questions? We'll final call out for questions before we move on. Of course, if you want to post questions in the chat as we move on, then we can make sure that those questions do get back to either Eddie or Tricia, and we can make sure that we get an answer sent your way.
For anybody who does maybe want a bit more information about the system, please contact us afterwards, and we'd be happy to sort of take you in and run you through how that works.
Great. I can't see any questions coming through, but details of the presentation will obviously be on the website, and of course we'll find their way onto YouTube. So yeah, do look up IKM and that inductee pass solution if you think that might be useful. So I think I'm afraid it looks like we haven't got any questions just at the moment, Tricia. So I think on that basis we will move on. So thank you both very much for that. Sarah, we are going to come to you next for your 3x3.
Yep, hi, I'm Sarah from Centre for Leadership Performance. For those of you who don't know, the Centre for Leadership Performance is a not-for-profit leadership development company based in Cockermouth. We're a small team and we work with a network of trusted expert associates. Our mission is to develop Cumbria's leaders for today and tomorrow. Why? Because we think better leadership results in better lives for all of us. We believe that leadership, everyone can show leadership, which is why we start working in primary schools right the way through to supporting leaders and managers at all stages of their career journey. We work as that trusted, honest broker. We work with our networks to bring leaders from different sectors and industries together to facilitate leadership and dialogue and to share best practice and build networks. And we also work in collaboration with businesses to co-create and deliver leadership development programs to support leaders at every level. Next slide, please. I lead in all the young people work that we do, which is what I wanted to talk about, how we kind of nurture our future leaders of Cumbria. Currently, we're working with about 80 primary schools through the Primary Business Partnership, a free brokerage and signposting service for schools across Copeland and Allerdale. We currently surveyed over 400 parents who said that they would love support from businesses with mini career quizzes or career videos, which we're gathering and we're sharing with Inspira and the Business Schools Collaboration Programme. We've also just completed our mini enterprise scheme, which is Bright Stars, which is a county-wide initiative which saw 30 schools match to 30 companies, and out of a £1,500 investment, they saw over £15,000 raised for local schools and charities. We also work with businesses to enhance their work experience programs, and we're currently working on behalf of Sellafield on the Elements program, and we piloted a new projects program last year working with 15 supply chain companies from SMEs, micro, nuclear and non-nuclear, and we'll be running that again for the next year and looking at how we can pilot some virtual experiences. We also saw our Dream Placement Celebration event held virtually, which is a collaboration between businesses, young people and educators, and helping businesses attract local young people into their organisations. We have also been working on behalf of the Cumbria LEP Education and Skills Group to survey young people aged 15 to 25 to understand the impact that the COVID-19 is having on them. With 600 responses, we're keen to share our findings with cluster members. And finally, as I said, we're not for profit. We made profit this year for the first time ever, and we've invested that into our Cumbria Future Leaders Network. So building on those young people connections, this is an active network that brings together the youth groups and youth boards together to collaborate and be that diverse collective youth voice for Cumbria. So watch this space. Next slide.
And that's the 3 minutes up, I'm afraid, Sarah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. That's great. Just if you want to get involved and get in touch, give us a call.
Great, thank you, Sarah. For those who may be following the chat, I can see Ivan's just posted in there. Thank you for Centre for Leadership Performance for continually reaching out to BECBC and our members. Even more important in the new normal, with a thumbs up. So thank you for that, Sarah. Appreciate you rushed through, but that slide hopefully just is still on screen and you'll be able to see how you might be able to get involved as we look forward to our next speaker, and that is from Cumbria Exchange. We have Helen So let me just, Helen Conway, and I can see that you are on. You've no video, but you are unmuted.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As been introduced, my name's Helen Conway, and I'm currently on secondment as Cumbria Exchange Coordinator. So this morning, I'm going to present to you our new skills-based volunteering initiative, which focuses on virtual volunteering. So the initial idea for this was in response to findings from our social value report towards the end of 2019. And this identified that professional expertise and skills-based volunteering was one of the most effective and impactful ways to deliver social value. So we began to work on the idea of virtual volunteering, and we secured funding in March 2020 from Sellafield Limited to enable us to create an area on our existing website, which actually goes live next week. So it's not available at the moment. Next slide, please, Andrew. So basically, what this is all about is starting to use the significant amount of talent in our area for social good. I think everybody's aware of how much non-profits actually provide critical support within our communities and often to our most vulnerable individuals, never more so than what we're experiencing right now with the pandemic. Unfortunately, that is paired with them often having limited core budgets, and this can block them from hiring the expert talent that they need to operate most effectively. We believe that skills-based volunteering and virtual volunteering can bridge that gap. On the other side of this, what we also want to do is facilitate meaningful volunteer opportunities so people can volunteer their skills in a really impactful way, connecting directly with non-profits. Part of this as well is also about the significant amount of spontaneous volunteers who have registered with Support Cumbria at this time to give back to their local communities. And what we want to do is to try and retain a proportion of those volunteers to continue being involved in their communities in a volunteering capacity. Next slide, please, Andrew. So this is just a brief overview of what I'm going to cover. I'm going to give a brief background to the exchange for people who aren't aware of what we do, a definition of virtual volunteering, and how people will be able to do that via the exchange. So the outcome of that is we do hope people will decide to sign up to volunteer virtually, and also if every one person just goes out and speaks to another person about the exchange and virtual volunteering. Next slide, please, Andrew. So Cumbria Exchange. Basically, Cumbria Exchange was launched just over 2 years ago now. It is a completely free web-based platform for community organisations, individuals and businesses. And what we do is we connect community organisations with passionate individuals and businesses who want to donate their skills, assets and services and make an impact. And we do this by, we allow non-profits, and by non-profits what we mean are charities, social enterprises, constituted community organisations generally. Sometimes we include schools in that, but that is only if it is for wider community benefit. So we allow them to share support wanted requests on the website. We also allow businesses to share support offered, and that can be things like spare places on training courses. So this new initiative is now going to allow individuals to share their skills and offer that virtually. It's also important to note that we're not just all about the website. We also work offline, generally in West Cumbria, brokering matches. Next slide, please, Andrew. So volunteering has changed dramatically in recent years. Previously, it often meant going somewhere to do something. However, today's volunteering includes donating your virtual time and skills. So instead of being present to volunteer in the real world, many people have now found their place in the world of virtual volunteering. Next slide, please, Andrew. So I'm a very visual person, and I really like these three images. So virtual volunteering, to me, it can be online volunteering, and it can really appeal to busy people. And it could also be picking up a phone and having a phone call with a non-profit, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, just to give them some professional advice. Particularly like the image on the bottom right, to me it sums it up. It's about bite-sized bits of benevolence. Next slide, please, Andrew. So how it works. Many people find it's much more convenient to be a virtual volunteer. You'll also interchangeably hear of micro volunteers, cyber volunteers, digital or even e-volunteers. They can serve causes near and far, and that service can take many forms. And I've just provided a few examples there. So website design, graphic design, IT support, management expertise, it could be business planning, business development, photography, and of course there's things like finance. Like I say, it's really, really broad. Next slide, please, Andrew. The benefits of virtual volunteering. So if we look at from the side of the volunteer first, there can be more opportunities to volunteer for multiple causes and organisations. It's a time to volunteer which is convenient to you. There's flexibility in scheduling, location, and level of involvement. We're generally at the moment talking about virtual volunteering, although when we start to ease lockdown and sort of go into the new normal, there may be elements there where you may start as a virtual volunteer and then combine that with offline volunteering. It's a unique outlet for skills and passions that might not necessarily be met by physical volunteering. It can give more opportunities for volunteers who may have barriers to volunteering. So that could include potentially some individuals with disabilities, or it might be that some volunteers are physically very remote. It can also fulfill education or career volunteer milestones for many. Next slide, please, Andrew. So for the community organisation or cause, the virtual volunteering can provide more volunteer positions that cover more or different tasks and skills. And often these tasks and skills might contribute to the organisation's resilience, their sustainability, their governance. So it's things that really deliver high levels of social value. There's also, obviously, there's access to skilled volunteers and additional ways that community organisations can save money on operating costs. So they really push through their funds on actual delivery. Next slide, please, Andrew. So the next slide is going to show you the process that an individual would go through if they wanted to register as an individual virtual volunteer. Next slide, please, Andrew. Okay, so we're starting at the top left. So just a reminder again, this isn't actually live at the moment, but will be as of next week. You would log on to the Cumbria Exchange website. You would click on volunteers. You would then register yourself as a volunteer. You would complete your profile. This might include things like your background, your professional expertise and the skills you believe you can offer. You might even want to specify if you're interested in specific causes, for example, youth, mental health. There's a lot of different causes you might have an interest in, or you might just want to keep it broad. That then comes through to us, and our team will quickly review, and if everything seems okay, we would then hit post. This then means that your volunteering offer is live on our website. A non-profit can then look at your profile and decide whether it seems like you can offer them what they need. You then get an email with the community organisation's request, and you can decide to accept and decline. Reasons for decline might be that you feel that your skill set doesn't actually offer them what they need. If you accept, you're then connected with the community organisation. Next slide, please, Andrew. So what you can do, hopefully, we'll get individuals who are willing to sign up as virtual volunteers and create their profile on the website. You could ask me to brief your colleagues if you get in touch via our info@ email address. You could tell somebody about Cymru Exchange and virtual volunteering. Virtual volunteering is just one of a number of options that you can do to get involved with Cymru Exchange. As I previously described, you can also post offers of support or respond to requests for support. You can follow us on social media. We've had Facebook and Twitter since the website was launched, and we've only very recently, in the last couple of weeks, created a company page on LinkedIn. So I'd really, really recommend that you follow that page if you want to keep up to date with us. Next page, please, Andrew. So that's my presentation finished, but I'd just like to say thanks to all the organisations who've supported us with this, Sellafield for providing the funding for the area of the website, and we've got a number of commitments from corporate partners already, as you can see, and obviously at the bottom there, the members of our steering group for Cymru Exchange as a whole. Just one final thanks, and that goes to Luke Richardson from Jacobs, who has really supported me with developing this initiative, and in particular on the technical side of things, which really isn't my bag. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Helen. Great presentation, and obviously plenty of good opportunities to get involved. I'm just going to go back one slide so people can see the web address, your email address, and your social network channels, because one of the points that came up in the chat, it'd be great to know when this goes live. So I suspect those are probably the best places to keep an eye on, Helen. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. In particular, obviously, if individuals are from business, if you're not already following our Cymru Exchange LinkedIn page, please do that. I've tried to send quite a few invitations out in the last couple of weeks.
All right, we've got a couple of questions which we'll just jump to quickly. Diane, you were first with a question. Do you want to ask that question to Helen?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Helen, great presentation. It was just really, do you have a real life example already of where done some virtual volunteering and it's made a real difference for a local charity? Just, I think probably our thinking is still in that you need to kind of go there in person. It'd be handy to have a real life example of where it's worked.
I'm trying to think actually, to be honest, that there is one, but it sort of was some support to Cymru Exchange itself, which was that we're in the middle of looking at our model going forwards. We're coming to the end of 2 years of our pilot programme, and we're looking at both our governance model and our funding model. And although there's a degree of knowledge around that from myself, it's just useful sometimes to get some professional guidance and for somebody to check back with as well. And I was able to do that with Richard Askew from Armstrong Watson. And that was just on the basis of, I think it was no more than a half-hour phone call just to bounce ideas off him. But it was really helpful. So to me, that sort of brings it home, the value. You know, half an hour of his time, and it really helped. Just in a way, sort of say to me, yeah, we're on the right approach to this in terms of the model. There is one that hasn't actually been completed as yet, but there is something which was a request that came in the last few weeks from KDAS, the Drugs and Alcohol Service, and they were looking for some support from an individual who would chair a county-wide tech review for them, basically looking at what technology they're using at the moment, and future-proofing it to a degree. And so that they put that on the website as a support requested, and we've already partially matched them up with an individual to do that. And obviously that's something that can be done via online meetings and phone calls, but obviously we haven't seen the outcome of that as yet.
Thanks, Helen. Great example. And I think there is something about having access to critical friends as well, isn't it? That perhaps have a diverse viewpoint to yourself.
That was exactly the phrase I was looking for. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And we had one other question which came from Brian Ormson. So Brian, if you want to unmute yourself, then you can put that question across to Helen.
Hi, Helen. Great presentation. I just wondered if you do, part of the profile, do you do any background checks on the people? Or is it just a profile for somebody to look at and then you would expect that they would do some background checks? I'm thinking of security checks or CBR checks or anything like that.
Thanks, Brian. Actually, we don't do that. How we operate is basically, to a certain extent, it's on good faith of users of the website. They also have to sign up to terms and conditions to be users of the website as well. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we see ourselves as a broker, and we do expect that if an individual is in touch as a potential volunteer with a community organisation, that they have their own checks and balances in place. They would have volunteer policies, potentially volunteer agreements that they would go through with an individual, and that would cover also any kind of security checks such as DBS.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions for Helen before we move on to the next stage of the meeting? By all means, just unmute your mic and speak up if you want to put any other questions to Helen. Not looking likely. So we're at 11:25. We're going to move on to the next section. Thank you, Helen. Really appreciate your presentation, and looks like some good opportunities to get involved there. So the next section, we are building on some feedback from the last meeting about when we broke into the breakout rooms and we had a bit of a networking session. So we're going to repeat that now, and I know this is something that a lot of people have missed. So I'm going to put you into different breakout rooms. These are basically just smaller groups, and you can have smaller group conversations. It might be an opportunity just to catch up, or just to do a quick social pitch of who you are, what you do, and so on, and spread those connections within the membership. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you found that was a useful 15 minutes and a good opportunity to reconnect or just connect with people that you might not have seen or might not even have met at some of the previous meetings. So I'm going to move on just very quickly as we wrap up. And we've just wanted to put up some slides that show some of the other members within the cluster who can help your business and prepare them perhaps for return to the workplace or adapting to the new normal. So these are all BECBC members. Full details are on the COVID-19 page, which is on the current website, so you can see who may be able to help you within the cluster. So we've just got a few aspects there in terms of things like PPE, professional services, legal services. Obviously, that's something which is sort of at the forefront of a lot of people's minds as they look to prepare to go back to work. So I'm going to put the mentee slide up. Just while that is up, I'll hand back to Diane for you to round off today's meeting. But if you could go to mentee.com and use that code 550352. That is anonymous feedback that will come back to us, and obviously it's always useful to get that feedback. Make sure the events are targeted at the right sort of level, the right sort of content. But while people are giving that feedback, over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Andrew. I think another meeting that's really shown the diversity and capability that we have in the cluster. I think for me the important thing is that we all connect up and use that as much as possible. In the networking I was in with Chris, who made a really good point about the economy is going to recover far better if we can get consumer confidence back up. And actually there's a part for all of us to play in that. So if you have any good news stories, positive things that are going on, if like Adam you've adapted very quickly and you're offering things that support other companies through COVID-19, please let us know through Hazel, because we can help you put your teeth back in for a start. We can help you push that message out. But thank you all. I hope you have a great time for the rest of today and a really good time for the rest of the week. As Hazel says, we do have a coffee time catch-up on Friday, and there's also a business support group meeting as well. So check out the events calendar we were just talking about and access as much as you can of what we're offering out. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for sticking around. Really appreciate you staying right through to the end. Look forward to seeing you at the next event. Take care, everybody.